Christmas dinner at my house. My daughter-in-law took a long sip of her wine and announced loudly that her mother had always been an independent woman who never needed anyone. Unlike some people around here, she added. She looked me straight in the eye. I set my fork down on the table. I took a breath, and I said, "That is great. So, starting in January, she can pay the mortgage on your apartment." My daughter-in-law choked on her wine. "What apartment?" she asked, her voice cracking. The silence that fell over that table was like a block of ice. But let me back up. Let me tell you who I am and how I arrived at that moment. My name is Margaret. I am 66 years old. I worked my entire life as a nurse at the county hospital. My hands know the heft of sick bodies, the sharp smell of antiseptic, the endless nights working double shifts just to make ends meet. For 42 years, I cared for the sick. 42 years of bending over gurneys, of holding the hands of strangers in their final moments, of sprinting down cold hallways with my heart in my throat. My husband, Arthur, died 6 years ago. A massive heart attack while he was watering the plants in the garden of our small house. He fell right between the rose bushes he had planted himself. When I found him, he was still clutching the garden hose. I was left a widow at 60, with a meager Social Security check and 2 adult children. Caleb, my oldest, was 32 at the time. He had just met Chloe. Emily, my daughter, was already married to Matt and living in another city. The house Arthur and I lived in was small, but it was ours. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a kitchen, and that garden Arthur loved so much. We paid that mortgage for 25 years. When he died, the house was finally mine. Debt-free, no liens. It was the only thing I had. A year after Arthur passed, Caleb came to see me. He arrived on a Sunday afternoon, jittery, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said. I brewed a pot of coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had eaten thousands of dinners as a family. "I am going to marry Chloe," he told me. I was happy for him. He was my son. I wanted to see him happy. "But we have a problem," he continued. "We have nowhere to live. Rent is astronomical, and we want something of our own. We found the perfect condo. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, in a great neighborhood. But we need the down payment." He looked at me with those eyes I had known since he was a baby. "How much?" I asked, even though I knew the answer was going to hurt. $45,000. The coffee went cold in my hands. $45,000. My house was worth $70,000. My savings added up to $12,000. "Mom, I know it is a lot, but it is for my future, to start my family." Caleb took my hand. "Chloe and I will pay the mortgage. We will not ask you for anything else, just the start." I did not sleep that night. I walked through my small house. I touched the walls Arthur had painted. I sat on the sofa where we had watched our children grow up. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I sold the house. I sold the furniture. I sold everything except my clothes and a few photos. I scraped together $57,000. I gave $45,000 to Caleb for the condo. With the remaining $12,000, I rented a tiny studio apartment for myself. 2 rooms in a rough part of town. $400 a month. No garden, no memories, no Arthur. Caleb cried when I handed him the cashier's check. "Mom, I do not know how to thank you," he said, hugging me tight. "Someday I will pay you back. I promise." I believed him. He was my son. 3 months later, they got married. The wedding was in a fancy banquet hall paid for by Chloe's parents. I wore a cream-colored dress I bought at a thrift store. Chloe wore an imported dress of French lace, bright white, perfect. When we were officially introduced, Victoria, Chloe's mother, looked me up and down. "Oh, so you are Caleb's mother," she said. She smiled, but her eyes were empty. "Chloe told me you worked at a hospital. How noble." The tone was not one of admiration. It was pity. That same night, during dinner, I heard Victoria talking to her friends. "Poor Caleb," she said. "His mother is such a simple woman, very different from us." They laughed. I was sitting 3 tables away, but I heard every word. I swallowed hard. I smiled. I clapped when they cut the cake. Caleb and Chloe moved into the condo. I helped them with the move. I carried boxes. I scrubbed floors. I hung curtains. "Mom, take a break," Caleb would say. But Chloe barely spoke to me. She was busy deciding where to put every piece of furniture, every painting. "No, that lamp does not go there," she would snap. "Victoria says it ruins the feng shui." A month later, I got a call from the bank. "Mrs. Margaret, the mortgage payment for the apartment in your name has not been paid." My heart stopped. "In my name?" "Yes, ma'am. You are listed as the primary borrower. The monthly amount is $850. I called Caleb. "Son," the bank called. "You did not pay the mortgage." Silence. "Caleb?" "Mom, I am sorry. It is just that this month we had expenses. Chloe needed to change the living room furniture. It was $3,000. I promise we will pay next month." I paid the installment. From my pension of $920 a month, I paid $850. That left me with $70 for food, medicine, and transportation. The next month, the same call. "Mrs. Margaret, the payment has not been made." I called Caleb again. "Mom, Chloe wants to remodel the kitchen. Just this one more month, I swear." I paid again. And the next month, and the next. 4 years, 48 payments, $40,800. While I lived on $70 a month, Chloe remodeled, shopped, decorated. And every time I saw her, every time we went to a family gathering, she talked about her mother. My mom, Victoria, has always been successful. She has her own house, her own car. She never depended on anyone. She would look at me. And I stayed silent. Until that Christmas night, until she choked on the wine, until she asked, "What apartment? What apartment?" Chloe repeated. But now her voice was barely a whisper. The words cracked in her throat. Everyone at the table was staring. Emily had tears in her eyes. Matt looked like he wanted to say something but stayed quiet. Caleb still had his head down, like a scolded child. And Victoria, the perfect Victoria, was sitting on the other side of the table with a glass of champagne in her hand, watching me with a frozen smile on her face. "The apartment where you live," I repeated, and my voice sounded steadier than I expected. "The apartment I bought for my son 4 years ago. The apartment whose mortgage I have paid every single month for 48 consecutive months." Chloe dropped her glass. The red wine spilled onto the white tablecloth like an open wound. "That cannot be true." "Caleb, tell her it is not true." My son finally looked up. His eyes were red. "It is true, Chloe," he said. His voice was so low I could barely hear it over the sound of silverware clinking as someone dropped a fork. "Mom paid the down payment, and I could not pay the installments. She paid them. All of them." Chloe's face cycled through 1,000 emotions in seconds. Shock, confusion, shame. But what I saw most was rage. Pure rage. "Are you telling me we live in an apartment your mother pays for? That for 4 years I have been living off your mother's charity?" The word charity sounded like a slur in her mouth. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "And you never thought to tell me?" "Chloe." "Wait." Caleb tried to grab her arm, but she pulled away violently. "Do not touch me. Do not talk to me. Oh my God, what is my mother going to say?" And there it was. The real worry. Not that I, a 66-year-old woman, had been living on $70 a month. Not that I had sold my home, my memories, everything I had left of my life with Arthur. No. What mattered to her was what Victoria would say. I looked at Victoria. She had stopped smiling. Her hands were clenched around her glass, and she looked at me with something that resembled contempt mixed with fear. "Well," I said, wiping my mouth with my napkin and standing up with all the dignity I could muster. "Since the topic has come to light, I am taking this opportunity to inform you that the last payment I made was December's. This one, the Christmas payment. Starting in January, Caleb and Chloe, you will take charge of your apartment, or Victoria can, or whoever you decide, but I cannot do it anymore." The silence that followed was absolute. No one breathed. "You cannot do that," Chloe whispered. "The apartment is in Mom's name," Caleb said with a dead voice. "If we do not pay, we lose it." "Then you had better find the money," I replied. $850 a month. It is not that much, is it? After all, your mother Victoria is so independent. Surely she can help you. Chloe's eyes filled with panic. She turned to her mother. Mom, you can lend it to us, right? Just until we figure it out. Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Honey, right now I do not have the liquidity. You know, I just remodeled my house and— Remodeled your house. Emily's voice cut the air like a knife. My daughter had stood up. You remodeled your house while Margaret lived on $70 a month. Victoria turned red. I did not know that. Of course you did not know. Emily walked around the table until she was right in front of Victoria. Because you never asked. Because you did not care. Because while you bragged about your independence and your success, my mother skipped meals to pay for your daughter's apartment. Emily, it is not necessary. I tried to intervene. Yes, it is necessary. Mom, Emily turned to me with eyes shining with fury. It is very necessary. Because for 4 years I have watched you get thinner. I have seen you wear the same clothes over and over. I have seen you turn down invitations because you did not have money for the bus. And when I asked you, you always said you were fine. Matt walked over to Emily and put a hand on her shoulder. Calm down, honey. I'm not going to calm down. Emily shook him off. Do you know how many times I called Caleb asking him to help Mom? How many times I told him she looked bad, that she needed help? She looked at her brother with disgust. And he always had excuses. That they were renovating. That Chloe needed this or that. That next month. Caleb buried his face in his hands. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Sorry does not cut it. Emily was crying now. Mom sold her house. The house where we grew up. The house Dad loved. She sold everything for you. And you let her live in misery while your wife bought luxury furniture. Chloe tried to defend herself. I did not know any of this. You did not know. Emily laughed bitterly. Did you never wonder why Margaret never came to visit you? Why she always said she was busy when you invited her to dinner? Why she never accepted gifts on her birthday? Emily's voice shook. It was because she had no way to return the visit. Because she had no money to invite you back. Because her pride was the only thing she had left, and she was not going to beg at her own son's door. I sat back down. My legs would not hold me anymore. Emily was right about everything. For 4 years, I had invented excuses. I am tired from work. I have a double shift. I do not feel well. Anything to avoid explaining why I lived in a tiny apartment in the worst neighborhood in the city. Why my clothes were years old. Why I had lost 30 pounds. Victoria finally spoke, and her voice had lost all that arrogant assurance. Margaret, I did not know. If you had known, what would you have done? I interrupted her. Would you have helped me? Or would you have kept bragging about your house, your car, your perfect life? Victoria opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Exactly, I said. You would have done nothing. Because to you, I was always invisible. The poor mother-in-law, the retired nurse, the insignificant widow. I stood up again. This dinner is over. Everyone can leave. Mom, please. Caleb approached me. We have to talk about this. There is nothing to talk about, I replied. I gave you 4 years of my life, 4 years of sacrifice. And in all that time, not once did you come to ask me if I was okay. Not once. I walked toward the door of my small apartment. Now, please, leave. All of you. Emily was the last to go. She hugged me tight before leaving. I love you, Mom, and I will be here for whatever you need. When I closed the door, I was alone in the silence. The leftovers of the dinner were scattered on the table. The spilled wine stained the tablecloth, the half-eaten plates. And I, Margaret, standing in the middle of my small living room, trembling. Not from fear, not from sadness, from rage. From years of contained rage that had finally exploded. I sat on the worn-out sofa and cried. I cried for Arthur, who had died without seeing what our son had become. I cried for my lost house. I cried for the 4 years I was never going to get back. And I cried for myself, for the woman who had been foolish enough to think that a mother's love was enough. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city through the thin walls. And as the sunrise began to filter through the window, I knew that everything had changed. There was no going back. The days that followed were strange. Caleb called me 17 times in 3 days. I did not answer any of them. Chloe sent me text messages. Margaret, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. I deleted the messages without reading past the first line. Emily came every afternoon after work. She brought food that I barely touched. Mom, you have to eat something. I sat in front of the plate and pushed the food from one side to the other. I am not hungry. You did the right thing, Emily told me. It took a while, but you did it. I nodded, but I said nothing. Because deep down, part of me felt guilty. A part of me was still the mother who wanted to protect her son, who wanted to believe that everything was going to get better. But that part grew smaller every day. On the 5th day after Christmas dinner, someone knocked on my door at 7 in the morning. I thought it was Emily. I opened it without looking through the peephole. It was Caleb. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. His hair was messy. Mom, please, let me come in. For a moment, I considered slamming the door in his face. But he was my son. Even if he had disappointed me, even if he had used me, he was my son. I stepped aside. He walked in with slow steps, looking around the apartment as if he were seeing it for the first time. The peeling paint on the walls, the old furniture I had bought secondhand, the small table with only 2 chairs, the narrow kitchenette where barely one person fit. My God, he whispered, this is where you live. This is where I have lived for 4 years, I replied with a flat voice, while you lived in a 3-bedroom condo with a balcony. He sat on the sofa and covered his face with his hands. I did not know it was so. Miserable, I finished the sentence. You can say it. It is miserable. But it was what I could afford after giving you $45,000. Caleb started to cry. A deep, gut-wrenching sob. His shoulders shook. I am sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. I was a coward. A horrible son. I sat next to him. But I did not touch him. Why did you never tell me you could not pay? I asked. Why did you let me pay for 4 years without saying anything? Because I was afraid. His voice sounded choked among the tears. Afraid that Chloe would leave me if she knew the truth. Afraid of disappointing you. Afraid to admit that I had failed. And you let me carry everything? I said. Yes. He lifted his face. His eyes were swollen, red. And there is nothing I can say to justify it. Nothing. He wiped his face with his hands. Chloe is not speaking to me. She sleeps in the guest room. She says she married a liar, that our whole life together was a lie. Part of me felt satisfaction hearing that. Another part, the mother part, felt pain seeing him suffer. And what are you going to do? I asked. I do not know, he replied. The bank already sent us the notice. If we do not pay the January installment in 15 days, they start foreclosure proceedings. We will lose the condo. I stayed silent. He was expecting me to say, I would help, that we would find a solution, that everything was going to be okay. But I said nothing. Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. His voice trembled. But I need a little more time, just until I can. I did not interrupt him. My voice sounded cold even to my own ears. No more, Caleb. But, Mom. I said, no. I stood up. For 4 years I gave you time. For 4 years I believed you every time you said next month. It is over. Caleb stood up too. So, you are going to let us lose the apartment? You are going to let us end up on the street? You have a job, I replied. Chloe has a job. Between the two of you, you make over $3,000 a month. You can pay $850, or you can sell the apartment and live in something more modest, like me. I cannot sell it. It is in your name. And with the debts we have, we would not walk away with anything. There it was, the truth. What debts? I asked, though I already knew I was not going to like the answer. Caleb sat back down. He seemed to have shrunk. Chloe has credit cards. Lots of them. She owes like $25,000. I have a personal loan for $10,000. And there are overdue bills. The car, utilities. I did the math in my head. $35,000 in debt, on top of the mortgage. And where did all that money go? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Furniture, clothes, trips, dinners. Chloe said we had to keep up appearances, that her family expected a certain lifestyle. The Victoria lifestyle, I said. Exactly, he admitted, always trying to equal Victoria. to prove to her that we could also have a good life. He rubbed his eyes. And meanwhile, you were living like this. He pointed around the apartment with a gesture of despair. Mom, when I think about everything you did for us and how we repaid you, do not continue. I stopped him. I have cried enough over this. Now, I need you to leave. But we have to resolve. We do not have to resolve anything. I walked to the door and opened it. You have to resolve your problems. With your wife, with your debts, with your life. I have already given enough. Caleb stood frozen in the middle of the living room, looking at me with pleading eyes. Are you abandoning me? No, son, I replied. And for the first time, I felt the tears burning my eyes. You abandoned me 4 years ago. I am just stopping carrying the consequences of your decisions. He left without saying another word. I closed the door and leaned against it. The tears finally fell. Because even though Caleb had failed me, even though he had used me, left me to live in poverty while he enjoyed luxuries, he was still my son. And seeing him like that broke my heart. 2 days later, Emily arrived with news. Caleb went to ask Victoria for money, she told me while we drank tea in my tiny kitchen. And, she said she cannot, that she has her own expenses, that they are adults and must solve their problems alone. Emily let out a bitter laugh. Can you believe it? After years of bragging about her independence and success, it turns out she does not have money to help either. How do you know all that? I asked. Chloe told a cousin. The cousin told a friend. The friend called me. Emily took a sip of tea. You know how these things are. Gossip flies. And Chloe. Furious, Emily smiled with satisfaction. She confronted her mother. She told her she always bragged about having money, but when push came to shove, she was useless. Victoria got offended. Now they are not speaking either. I felt a mix of emotions. Satisfaction, sadness, guilt. This is getting out of control, I said. No, Mom. Emily took my hand. This is getting exactly where it needed to get. For years, everyone lived a lie. Victoria bragging about a life she does not have. Chloe spending money she did not earn. Caleb lying to keep up appearances. And you sacrificing yourself in silence. She squeezed my hand. It was time for the truth to come out. She was right. But that did not make it hurt any less. That night, while I was lying down, staring at the cracked ceiling of my bedroom, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated to answer. Finally, I did. Margaret. It was Victoria's voice. We need to talk. Margaret. Victoria's voice sounded different, without that tone of superiority she always had. Almost shaky. We need to talk. I stayed silent for a moment, debating whether to hang up. What do you want to talk about, Victoria? I asked finally. About this whole disaster, she replied. We can meet tomorrow. There's a coffee shop near you. Where do you live? Can you give me the address? I wanted to tell her no, that I had nothing to talk about with her, but something in her voice stopped me. A kind of urgency I had not heard before. That is fine, I said. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. I gave her the address and hung up. I could not sleep that night. I stayed awake wondering what Victoria wanted. Would she come to scold me for exposing the situation? To defend her daughter? To brag again about her supposed independence? At 3 o'clock sharp the next day, I walked into the coffee shop. Victoria was already there, sitting at a table in the back. When I approached, I noticed something I had never seen before. She looked tired, older. The wrinkles around her eyes were deeper than I remembered. Her makeup failed to hide the dark circles. Thank you for coming, she told me when I sat down. She did not smile. We ordered coffee. Neither spoke until the waiter left. Chloe is not speaking to me, Victoria started, looking at her cup. She says I disappointed her, that when she needed me most, I turned my back on her. And why are you telling me this? I asked. Victoria looked up. Because I have to tell you the truth. And it is not going to be easy. She took a deep breath. I am not independent. I never was. The silence that followed was heavy. What? Was all I could say. Everything you see, everything you brag about, everything Chloe believes about me, is a lie. The words were coming out fast now, as if she had been holding them in for years. My house is not mine. It belongs to my sister. She lives abroad and lends it to me. The car is financed, and I am 3 payments behind. The designer clothes I buy at thrift stores and pass off as new. The trips I post on social media are from years ago, recycled photos. I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. Why? I finally asked. Why lie like that? Because my husband left me. Her voice cracked. 12 years ago. He left with a younger woman and left me with nothing. I had to start from zero. But I could not let Chloe know. I could not let anyone know that the great Victoria had failed. She took a sip of coffee with trembling hands. So I invented a life. I bragged about things I did not have. I went into debt to keep up appearances. And I taught my daughter to value those appearances above everything. Chloe knows nothing about this. It was not a question. It was a statement. She knows nothing, Victoria confirmed. And now she is desperate because she thinks her successful and independent mother abandoned her in her time of need. But the truth is, I am more broke than she is. She wiped a tear rolling down her cheek, ruining her makeup. I owe $22,000 in credit cards, $5,000 in loans. And my sister just notified me she needs her house back in 3 months. I have nowhere to live, Margaret. I literally have nothing. I did not know what to feel. Satisfaction seeing that the arrogant woman who had belittled me for years was worse off than me? Pity because in the end, she was also a woman who had suffered? Rage because her lies had influenced Chloe and ruined my son? Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Because I need you to understand that I bear a large part of the blame. Victoria looked me straight in the eye. I taught Chloe that what mattered was appearances, that you had to have the best, even if you could not afford it, that people judged you for what you had, not for who you were. She closed her eyes. I taught her all the wrong values, and now she is paying the consequences. And my son too, I added bitterly. And your son too, she admitted. Caleb tried to keep up with those expectations I put in my daughter's head. And you paid the price. She leaned forward. Margaret, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I treated you poorly, that I looked down on you, that I made you feel like less because you worked in a hospital while I bragged about a life that was not even real. So I came to ask for your forgiveness. Her voice broke completely. And to tell you that you have every right to be furious. With Caleb, with Chloe, and especially with me. She held her coffee with both hands, as if trying to warm herself. I also came to tell you that I am going to talk to Chloe. I am going to tell her the truth, the whole truth. About my life, about my lies, about everything. And do you think that is going to change anything? I asked. I do not know, she admitted. But it is what I should have done years ago. It is time for my daughter to see reality. It is time for her to stop chasing a fantasy that I myself created. We sat in silence. The noise of the coffee shop filled the space between us. People laughing, talking, living their normal lives while we two older women, faced the consequences of years of lies and sacrifices. There is something else, Victoria said after a while. Caleb told me how much you were paying for the mortgage each month. $850, from a pension of $920. She nodded as if confirming something to herself. That means you lived on $70 a month. For food, medicine, transportation, everything. Yes, I replied simply. My God, she whispered. I used to spend $70 on one dinner, on a pair of shoes on sale, on any nonsense. She covered her mouth with a hand. And while I did that, you were skipping meals. I did not come here for you to feel pity for me, I said with more harshness than I intended. It is not pity, Victoria replied. It is shame. Shame for having behaved the way I behaved. Shame for having raised my daughter with such superficial values. Shame for having contributed to your suffering. She wiped another tear. You worked as a nurse for 42 years. You cared for the sick. You saved lives. And I treated you as if you were less than me, when the truth is, I am nothing compared to you. Victoria. No, let me finish, she interrupted me. I need to say this. You are what I always pretended to be. Strong, truly independent, capable of sacrificing everything for your son. I am just an empty facade, a lie in expensive clothes. She took my hand across the table. Hers was cold. And if I could turn back time and change how I treated you, I would. But I cannot. I can only ask for your forgiveness and try to fix the mess I helped create. I withdrew my hand slowly, not with anger, just with weariness. I do not know if I can forgive you, Victoria, I said honestly. Not right now, maybe never. I understand, she nodded. I do not expect your forgiveness. I just needed you to know the truth. She stood up, left money on the table to pay for both coffees. I am going to talk to Chloe tonight. I am going to tell her everything. She will probably hate me. She will probably never forgive me. But it is the right thing to do. Before leaving, she stopped. One more thing. The apartment where Chloe and Caleb live. I know it is in your name, and I know they are about to lose it. I tensed, expecting her to ask me to keep paying. I am not going to ask you to save it, she said, as if reading my mind. They got into this mess. They have to get themselves out, but I wanted you to know that I am going to do everything possible to help them. I am going to sell the little I have, my jewelry, my clothes, whatever. And I am going to give them that money. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that I am going to try to compensate for the damage. Not to you, because I know nothing is going to compensate for 4 years of your life, but at least to them, so that you do not have to feel guilty if everything falls apart. She left without waiting for an answer. I stayed sitting in that coffee shop with the cold coffee in front of me, trying to understand what had just happened. The woman who had been my silent enemy for years had just revealed her perfect life was a lie, that she was as broke as I was, that her problems were even worse. And I did not know if that made me feel better or worse. When I got to my apartment that afternoon, I found Emily waiting for me at the door. Mom, I have to tell you something, she said urgently. Caleb just called. The bank gave him an ultimatum. If he does not pay the January installment plus overdue interest in 5 days, they lose the condo. It is $1,200. I leaned against the wall. It is not my problem, I said, but my voice sounded hollow. I know, Emily hugged me, and you do not have to do anything, but I needed you to know, 5 days, $1,200. The apartment where I had invested my life savings, the apartment for which I had sold my house, my memories, my future. And now it depended on whether Caleb could get that money or not. That night I dreamed of Arthur. He was in our garden, watering the plants. He looked young, healthy, happy. Margaret, he was telling me, what are you going to do? I do not know, I answered him in the dream. I do not know what to do anymore. Yes, you do, he smiled. You have always known. You just have to listen to your heart. I woke up with tears on my face, but for the first time in days, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next day, I went to the bank. Not to pay, to talk. The manager received me in his office. He was a young man, probably Caleb's age, with a gray suit and a serious expression. Mrs. Margaret, I understand you are here about the apartment, he said while reviewing papers on his computer. The situation is delicate. They have 5 days to catch up, or we will start the foreclosure process. I know, I replied, but I need to know something. If I lose the apartment, what happens to the money I already paid? The manager sighed. Unfortunately, with the accumulated debts and interest, it is likely you will not recover much. Maybe $5,000 or $6,000 after the bank recovers what is owed. $5,000 or $6,000 out of the more than $40,000 I had paid. I felt the blood rush to my head. And if I sell the apartment before you foreclose, that would be ideal. The manager leaned forward. But you would need to do it fast. And in the current market, with the need to sell urgently, you would probably have to accept a low price. He did some calculations. The apartment is worth approximately $120,000. But in a quick sale, maybe you get $90,000. Minus the debt to the bank, which is about $65,000 with interest, you would be left with $25,000. $25,000. It was not what I had invested, but it was much more than $5,000. How much time do I have to sell it? If you cancel the pending debt now, I can give you 30 days before we have to take measures, he answered. But you would need to pay the $1,200 today. $1,200 I did not have. I left the bank with my head spinning. I needed that money. Not to save Caleb, not to rescue Chloe, but to save myself, to recover at least some of what I had lost. Emily lent me the money without asking questions. Here, Mom, and do not pay me back. Consider it a belated gift for all the birthdays and Christmases we could not celebrate for you as you deserved. I paid the pending debt. The manager gave me the papers. You have 30 days, Mrs. Margaret. After that, I cannot do anything more. That afternoon I called Caleb. I need you to come to my apartment. You and Chloe. Tomorrow at 6 in the evening. Mom, it is not a request. I interrupted him. It is an order. Be there or I make decisions without consulting you. I hung up before he could answer. At 6 o'clock sharp the next day, there was a knock on the door. I opened it. Caleb and Chloe were standing in the hallway. They looked terrible. Caleb had lost weight. He had a grown-out, unkempt beard. Chloe was not wearing makeup. Her clothes, although expensive, were wrinkled. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much. Come in, I said without emotion. They walked in silently. They sat on the sofa, together but without touching. The space between them seemed like an abyss. I sat in front of them, on the only chair I had. I'm going to say this only once, I started, so listen well. Both nodded. I paid the debt to the bank. The apartment is not going into foreclosure. Yet, I saw relief flood their faces. Caleb opened his mouth to speak, but I stopped him with a gesture. I am not finished. I paid the debt to buy time. 30 days. In those 30 days, I am going to sell the apartment. What? Chloe turned pale. You cannot. I can and I will. My voice was firm. The apartment is in my name. It is my decision. I already spoke to a real estate agency. Tomorrow they start showing it. Caleb leaned forward, hands clasped together. Mom, please, we can fix this. I can get a second job. Chloe can. Chloe can what? I interrupted him. Sell her designer bags? Her expensive shoes? The furniture she bought with money you did not have? I looked at Chloe. Your mother came to see me. She told me the truth. About her life. About her lies. She already spoke to you. Chloe nodded, with tears rolling down her cheeks. Yesterday, she told me everything. Her voice was barely a whisper. My whole life was a lie. Everything I believed about her, about success, about how life should be, all fake. And yet, you followed that model, I said. You spent money you did not have. You bought things you did not need, all to maintain an image. I know, Chloe sobbed. I know, and I am sorry. I am so sorry. Margaret, I was horrible to you. I treated you like you were less than us, when you were the only one keeping us afloat. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. My mother told me you lived on $70 a month, $70. And I spent thousands on nonsense. She covered her face. How can you even look at us? How do you not hate us? Because you are my son's family, I replied. Because, although it hurts me to admit it, I love you, both of you, even after everything. Caleb broke down crying, a deep cry coming from his chest. We do not deserve your love. We do not deserve anything from you. You are right, I said harshly. You do not deserve it. But you have it anyway. That is why I paid the debt. That is why I am giving you 30 days. I stood up and walked to the window. But this ends here. I am going to sell the apartment. With the money I get, after paying the bank, I am going to do something I should have done 4 years ago. What? Caleb asked. I'm going to buy a place for myself. I turned to look at him. A small but decent condo, in a safe neighborhood, with windows that do not need bars, with walls without cracks, a place where I can live my final years with dignity. Emily was right when she told me I looked thinner, weaker. In the last 4 years, I had aged 10. And us? Chloe asked with a trembling voice. You are going to have to start over, I replied. You are going to have to look for an apartment you can afford. Smaller, more modest. In a less fancy neighborhood. You are going to have to sell the car if necessary. You are going to have to learn to live on what you earn, not on what you want to appear to be. I looked at both of them. And you are going to have to work, both of you, full-time, overtime if necessary, because no one else is going to rescue you. Caleb stood up. Mom, I promise we are going to change. We are going to do everything you say. We are going to. I do not want promises, I interrupted him. I have had enough promises. I want actions. I walked to the door and opened it. Now leave. You have 30 days to pack your things. The real estate agency will notify you when you need to be out to show the apartment. Chloe approached me before leaving. Margaret, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but is there any way you could forgive me someday? I looked at her. I saw a broken woman. A woman who had lost her fantasy world and now faced reality. A woman who, in a way, was as much a victim as I was of Victoria's lies. I do not know, Chloe, I replied honestly. Right now, I cannot even look at you without feeling rage. But maybe, with time, we can rebuild something. But only if you prove with actions that you have changed. She nodded and left. Caleb stopped in the doorway. Mom, Go, son, I said, tired. We have talked enough for today. He left. I closed the door and let myself fall onto the sofa. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. The real estate agency brought potential buyers. Caleb and Chloe had to keep the apartment spotless for the visits. Every time someone arrived to see the place, they had to leave. I saw them one afternoon, sitting in the corner coffee shop, waiting for the visit to end. They looked lost, scared, like children who suddenly realized the world was not the safe place they thought. Victoria kept her word. She sold her jewelry. Turns out most of it was fake. Cheap imitations she passed off as real. She only got $2,000. She gave it to Chloe. For you to rent something, she told her. It is not much, but it is what I have. Chloe told me later that it was the first time she hugged her mother and felt she was hugging a real person, not an image. Emily visited me every day. How do you feel, Mom? Tired, I always answered, but also relieved. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. 18 days after putting the condo on the market, I received an offer, $85,000. Less than it was worth, but more than I expected to get in such a short time. Accept it, I told the real estate agent. Are you sure? He asked. We could wait for a better offer. I am sure, I replied. I want to close this as quickly as possible. The sale closed in a week. After paying the debt to the bank, legal fees, commissions, I was left with $22,000. It was not a fortune, but it was mine. It was my freedom. I looked for apartments. I found a perfect one. 1 bedroom, spacious kitchen, renovated bathroom, in a building with security. $550 monthly rent. I could pay it with my pension and still have almost $400 left to live. I signed the lease. For the first time in 4 years, I was going to live with dignity. On moving day, Emily and Matt helped me. I did not have much to move. Clothes, some photos, the few pieces of furniture I had. Mom, this is beautiful. Emily looked around the new apartment with shining eyes. You deserve it. Yes, I replied, feeling something warm in my chest. I think I do. That night, alone in my new apartment, I sat by the window. I could see the city lit up. I could hear the sounds of normal life. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. My phone rang. It was Caleb. Mom, we found an apartment. It is small, a 1-bedroom in the industrial district, but we can afford it. I am glad, I said sincerely. And work? I got a second job. I work nights at a warehouse. Chloe is also working overtime. We are going to pay our debts. It is going to take years, but we are going to do it. There was a pause. And Mom, thank you. For not leaving us on the street. For giving us one last chance. I did not do it for you, I replied. I did it for me. Because I needed to get my life back. I know, his voice cracked, and that makes it even more valuable. We hung up. I looked out the window again. The story was not over. There was still a lot of pain, a lot of healing pending, many difficult conversations ahead. But I had taken the first step. I had chosen to save myself. And that, finally, was enough. 3 months passed. 3 months in which life slowly started to feel normal again. I woke up in my new apartment without that knot in my stomach I had carried for years. I could buy food without having to calculate every penny. I could pay for my medicine without having to choose between that and eating. One April morning, Caleb appeared at my door. He had not called ahead. He just knocked and waited. When I opened, I almost did not recognize him. He had lost more weight, but it was not the weight of anguish. It was different. He looked thinner but stronger, more mature. He had dark circles, but his eyes were clear. "Hello, Mom," he said softly. "Can I come in?" I let him in. He looked around the apartment with an expression I could not decipher. "It looks good here," he said finally. "You look good." "Thank you," I replied. We sat down. The silence between us was awkward, but not hostile. "I came to bring you something." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "It is not much, but it is a start." I opened the envelope. Inside was $200 in cash. "Caleb, you do not have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted me. "I owe you more than $40,000. I know I will never be able to pay you everything, but I am going to try. Every month I am going to give you what I can, even if it is $50, even if it is $20, but I am going to pay you." I looked at him. I saw my son, the man he had become. "How are things?" I asked. "Difficult," he admitted. "The apartment is awful. There is mold on the walls. The neighbors are noisy. Chloe cries some nights because she misses everything we had." He paused. "But we are together, and we are learning." "Learning what?" "To live for real," he replied. "Without lies, without pretenses. Chloe is working 12 hours a day. I work 16 between the two jobs. We come home exhausted. We eat pasta because it is what we can afford. But you know what is strange, Mom?" "What?" "We are happier now than when we lived in the big condo." He smiled sadly. "Because we do not have to fake it anymore. We do not have to prove anything to anyone. We just have to be us." I felt something move in my chest, something that had been frozen for months. "I am glad, son," I said. And it was true. "Chloe wants to come see you," he continued. "She is afraid. She says she does not know if you will receive her." I thought about that for a moment. About Chloe, about her cruel words that Christmas night, about all the slights accumulated over years. But I also thought about the broken woman who had left my apartment 3 months ago. "Tell her she can come," I said finally. "But I need time still. I am not ready to pretend everything is okay." "No one is asking you for that." Caleb took my hand. "We just ask that you give us the chance to show you that we have changed." He left shortly after. I left the money on the table. $200. It was a ridiculous amount compared to what I had lost, but it represented something bigger. It represented acknowledgement, responsibility, change. Emily came that afternoon as always. I told her about Caleb's visit. "And how do you feel?" she asked. "I do not know," I admitted. Part of me is still furious. Another part wants to believe they have really changed. "You do not have to decide now." Emily hugged me. "Take your time. They have to earn your forgiveness." She was right. Forgiveness was not something given just because. It had to be earned. With time, with actions, with real proof of change. 2 weeks later, Chloe called me. "Margaret, can we meet?" Her voice sounded nervous. "Please, just half an hour. I promise I am not going to ask you for anything." We agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where Victoria had confessed the truth to me. When I arrived, Chloe was already there. She looked so different that for a moment I doubted it was her. No makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, common clothes, no brands. She looked younger, more real. "Thank you for coming," she said when I sat down. "I was not sure you would." We ordered coffee. Neither spoke until they brought it. "I did not come to ask for forgiveness," Chloe started. "Well, yes, I came to ask for forgiveness. But I know words mean nothing, so I came to show you something." She pulled out her phone and showed me photos. Her apartment, small, bare walls, old furniture. "This is our room. This is the kitchen where barely 2 people fit. This is the bathroom that has broken pipes and the landlord won't fix them." She scrolled through more photos. "And this is me, at my job, bussing tables at a restaurant." I stared at the photos. Chloe, wearing an apron, clearing dirty dishes, waitressing job by day, she continued. "And at night I clean offices. I make $800 a month between the 2 jobs. It is not much, but it is honest." She put the phone away. "And you know what I learned, Margaret?" "What?" that my mother was right about something, about being independent. But she was wrong about how to achieve it. It is not by pretending. It is not by buying things. It is by working. It is by being honest. It is by living with what you have, not with what you want others to believe you have. She took a sip of coffee. And I learned something else. I learned what sacrifice really means. Because now, when I get home after 12 hours of work and my feet hurt and I can barely keep my eyes open, I think of you. Her eyes filled with tears. I think about how you did this for 4 years. But worse. Because you were already older. Because you had already worked your whole life. Because you deserved to rest, and instead, you were working to support us. Chloe. No, let me finish. She wiped her tears. I need to say this. I was cruel to you. I belittled you. I made you feel less. And all because my mother taught me that what mattered was appearing, not being. She took a deep breath. But my mother also taught me something unintentionally. She taught me what happens when you live a lie. It destroys itself. It crumbles. And you are left with nothing. She took something else out of her bag. A small notebook. I have been writing everything I remember about how I treated you. Every snide comment. Every look of contempt. Every time I compared your life to my mother's. She opened the notebook. The pages were full of small handwriting. And next to each thing, I write an apology. And a promise to do something different. She showed me a page. Here, for example, I wrote, I told Caleb I didn't want Margaret coming to our house because she was embarrassing with her old clothes. And next to it, I am sorry. I promise never to judge anyone by their appearance again. I promise to value people for who they are. Period. She closed the notebook. I know this does not change anything. I know it does not erase the pain I caused. But it is my way of not forgetting, of holding myself accountable. I looked at her. This woman in front of me was not the same arrogant Chloe I had known. Why are you doing all this? I asked. Because I do not want to be like my mother, she replied immediately. I do not want to reach 60 and realize my entire life was a lie. I do not want my children, if I ever have them, to grow up with the wrong values. She took my hand. And because I owe you more than I can ever pay, not in money, in respect, in gratitude, in recognition. I held her hand for a moment before letting go. I believe you, I said finally. But it still hurts, Chloe. I still wake up some nights remembering your words that Christmas night. I still struggle to look at you without feeling anger. I understand, she nodded, and I do not ask you to forgive me now. I only ask you to give me time to show you that I have changed, that I am different, that I am worth it. We stayed a while longer talking. She told me about her job, about how she and Caleb were paying off their debts little by little, about how Victoria had found a job as a sales associate in a store and was trying to rebuild her life too. When we said goodbye, Chloe hugged me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, she whispered. I watched her walk down the street, walking. No car, no luxuries, just a common woman trying to get to work. And for the first time, I felt something akin to hope. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come out of all this pain. Months kept passing. Summer arrived with its suffocating heat. But I had air conditioning in my new apartment. Small, but it worked. It was a luxury I hadn't had in years. Caleb continued coming every month, always with an envelope. Sometimes he brought $150, sometimes $200. Once he could only bring $80. Sorry, Mom. We had to pay for Chloe's dentist. She broke a molar and we couldn't wait. It is okay, I told him, and I meant it seriously. It was not the money that mattered anymore. It was the gesture. It was seeing him keep his word month after month. Chloe and I started talking more often. At first, just short messages. Hi, Margaret. Hope you are well. Over time, the conversations got longer. She told me about her day, about difficult customers at the restaurant, about how she was learning to cook because they couldn't eat out. I made chicken and rice yesterday, she texted me once. It came out horrible. The rice was sticky and the chicken dry. Caleb ate it all anyway and said it was delicious. Liar! I laughed reading that. It was the first time I laughed at something related to them in months. One August afternoon, Emily arrived with news. Mom, guess what? What? Victoria got her own apartment. Nothing fancy, but it is hers. Well, rented. But she is working and paying for it herself. I am happy for her, I said. And it was true. Victoria had fallen very low, but she was trying to get up. That deserved respect. And there is more. Emily smiled with satisfaction. Chloe and Victoria are going to therapy together. To heal their relationship. To understand the patterns that led them to where they were. That surprised me. Therapy. Yes, Chloe said they needed professional help, that they couldn't do it alone. Emily sat next to me. Do you know what that means, Mom? It means they are really changing, that they are doing the hard work. Maybe she was right. Maybe real change required more than just good intentions. It required help. It required facing uncomfortable truths. September arrived with its cool afternoons. One morning I received a call from Caleb. Mom, can you come to our apartment? Chloe and I want to show you something. I hesitated. I had not gone to visit them since they moved. I didn't know if I was ready. Please, he insisted. It is important. I went. The apartment was in a neighborhood I knew well. It was where I had lived before moving to my new place. I walked up the stairs. The building smelled of mold and fried food. I knocked on the door. Chloe opened. Margaret, thank you for coming. The apartment was as small as I had imagined, but it was clean, tidy. They had done their best to make it cozy. Cheap flowers in a vase, curtains they had clearly sewn themselves, a folding table with 2 chairs. Sit down, Mom. Caleb pointed to the small sofa. It was old, with sagging cushions, but there was a new blanket on top. I sat down. They stood in front of me, holding hands. We want to show you this. Chloe pulled out a folder. She opened it and showed me papers. They were bank statements, lists of debts, and next to it, a calendar with marked dates. We have paid off $8,000 of our debt in these 6 months, Caleb said. We still owe $27,000, but we are making progress. And here, Chloe pointed to another sheet, is the payment plan for you. We calculate that in 8 years, we can pay you back the $40,000 we owe you. 8 years. I would be 74. If I lived that long, I do not need you to pay me everything, I said. Yes, you do. Caleb knelt in front of me. You need to know that we take this seriously. That we are not going to forget what you did for us. Chloe knelt too. And we need to do it for us. To be able to look ourselves in the mirror. To be able to live with ourselves. I looked at them, both of them, kneeling in front of me, in that miserable apartment. And something inside me broke, not from pain, from something else, from something softer. Stand up, I said with a trembling voice. You do not have to kneel. They stood up, and for the first time in almost a year, I opened my arms. Caleb threw himself into a hug. He cried on my shoulder like when he was a child. I am sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. I know, son. I stroked his hair. I know. Chloe stood there, crying silently. I looked at her. Come here, I told her. She hesitated for a second. Then she approached. I hugged her too. The 3 of us together in that small apartment, crying. It was not complete forgiveness. There was still pain. There were still scars. But it was a beginning. When we separated, Chloe wiped her tears. I have something else to show you. She took me to the kitchen. On the table was a box. She opened it. Inside was a dress, dark green, simple but elegant. I made it, she said shyly. I am taking sewing classes. I thought that. I thought you would like to have something new, something I made with my hands, for you. I touched the fabric. It was soft. The work was well done. It is beautiful, I said. Thank you. I want to learn to make things, Chloe explained. I want to know how to create, not just buy. I want to have real skills, like you had when you worked as a nurse, like people who are really worth something. I looked at her. This woman had changed so much. I am proud of you, I said, and I meant it seriously. Her eyes filled with tears again. Really, really. We stayed for dinner. Chloe had prepared baked chicken with vegetables. It wasn't perfect. The chicken was a little dry, but it was made with love, with effort, and it tasted better than any expensive meal I had ever tasted. That night, walking back to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt peace. It wasn't complete happiness. It wasn't forgetting the pain, but it was peace. It was knowing that maybe, just maybe, something good had come out of all this. That my son had learned, that my daughter-in-law had changed, that we were all healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. December arrived again. A year since that Christmas dinner that had changed everything. Emily called me one morning. "Mom, what are you going to do for Christmas this year?" "I do not know," I admitted. "Maybe stay here. Quietly." "Caleb wants to invite you to his apartment," she said. "He says they want to make a dinner. Nothing fancy. Just family." I felt a knot in my stomach. "I don't know if I'm ready, Emily." "I know, Mom. But 12 months have passed. Maybe it is time to try to start over. For real." I thought about it for days. Finally, I told Caleb yes. Christmas afternoon, I arrived at his apartment wearing the green dress Chloe had made me. It fit perfectly. When he opened the door, Caleb looked at me with shining eyes. "Mom, you look beautiful." The apartment was decorated with simple ornaments. Paper garlands they had clearly made themselves. A star in the window, nothing expensive. But there was love in every detail. Emily and Matt were already there, and to my surprise, Victoria too. She stood up when she saw me. "Margaret," she said softly, "thank you for allowing me to be here." I looked at her. Victoria had also changed. She no longer wore those expensive clothes. She didn't have that air of superiority. She looked like what she was, an older woman trying to rebuild her life. "We all deserve a second chance," I said. We sat down to dinner. The table was small. We were all squeezed in. But no one complained. Chloe had cooked roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, salad, homemade bread. "I hope it is okay," she said nervously while serving the plates. "It looks delicious," I said. And when I tried the first bite, it was true. It wasn't perfect, but it was made with love. During dinner, Caleb stood up. "I want to say something," his voice trembled. "A year ago, on this same date, I destroyed this family with my lies. I hurt the person I love most in the world. My mother." He looked at me. "And this year, I want to give thanks. Because even though I didn't deserve it, you gave me another chance. You gave us another chance." Chloe also stood up. "A year ago, I said horrible words. Words that came from a place of ignorance and arrogance." Her voice cracked. "I said my mother was independent, different from some people. Looking at you, Margaret." She took a deep breath. "But you were right about everything. My mother was not independent. She lived a lie. And I was living the same lie." She wiped a tear. "This year, I learned what it really means to be independent. It means working for what you have. It means living with honesty. It means not needing to pretend to feel valuable." She looked directly at me. "And I learned that the most independent woman I know is you. You who sold your house for your son, who lived on $70 a month without complaining, who worked all your life with dignity." Victoria spoke then. "I also want to say something." She stood up with difficulty. "Margaret, I was cruel to you. I belittled you because I thought what mattered was having things, appearing successful. I taught those values to my daughter and almost destroyed her." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I apologize, not only for how I treated you, but for the damage I caused with my lies. To my daughter, to your son, to this family." She paused. "This year, I also learned. I learned that true success is not what you have, but who you are. And you were always successful. Margaret, you were always worthy. I was the failure. I stood up too. Everyone looked at me. I did not come here to receive apologies," I said. "You have apologized enough. I came because after a year of pain, of rage, of healing, I understood something. I looked at all of them. I understood that we all make mistakes, that we all have dark parts, that no one is perfect." I looked at Caleb. "My son failed me, but he is also the man who comes every month without fail to bring me what he can, who works 16 hours a day to pay his debts, who is learning to be better." I looked at Chloe. My daughter-in-law was cruel, but she is also the woman who took sewing classes to make me a dress, who writes to me every week to tell me about her day, who is in therapy facing her demons. I looked at Victoria. "And you, Victoria, lived a lie. But you also had the courage to confess the truth, to start over at your age, to work in a store without shame. I sat down. So no, I did not come to receive apologies. I came because it is Christmas, because we are family, and because after all, I forgive you. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Caleb started crying. Chloe too. Victoria covered her face with her hands. Emily got up and hugged me. I love you, Mom. I love you too, daughter. That night, before leaving, Chloe took me aside. Margaret, there is something I want to give you. She pulled out an envelope. It is not money, she rushed to say. It is something else. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten, with careful handwriting. Dear Margaret, it began. I know words cannot change the past, but I want you to know that I think of you every day. That when I feel tired at work, I think of you working at 60 to support me, and I find strength. That when I want to buy something I do not need, I think of you living on $70, and I save my money. That when I want to give up, I think of your strength, and I keep going. You are my example now. Not my mother with her fake life. You, with your real, honest, worthy life. Thank you for not abandoning me. Thank you for giving me the chance to be better. Love, Chloe. I finished reading with tears rolling down my cheeks. Thank you, I told her. For this, for everything. She hugged me tight. No, thank you, for teaching me what is really worthwhile in this life. When I got to my apartment that night, I sat by the window as I had done so many times, but this time I did not feel alone. I did not feel sad. I felt complete. I had lost 4 years of my life. I had lost my house. I had lost my savings, but I had gained something more valuable. I had gained my dignity back. I had gained respect. I had gained a family that finally valued me. And I had gained the peace of knowing I had done the right thing, that I had saved myself, that I had set boundaries, that I had demanded to be treated with respect. I looked at my reflection in the window. Margaret, 67 years old, retired nurse, widow, mother, mother-in-law, woman, survivor. I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt proud of the woman I saw. Another year passed. Then another. Life found its rhythm. Caleb and Chloe kept paying me every month without fail. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but always something. I kept the money in an account. I did not need it to live. My pension was enough now that I didn't have to pay anyone else's mortgage. But I kept it because it represented something important. It represented my son's fulfilled promise. In the 3rd year after that Christmas that changed everything, Caleb got a promotion. Nothing huge, but he made $300 more a month. Mom, now I can give you more, he told me excitedly. I can give you $500 a month instead of $200. No, son, I replied. Use that extra money to finish paying your debts. When you are debt-free, then we talk. Chloe also progressed. She left the waitressing job and got a job at a fabric store. They paid her better and also gave her a discount on materials. Her sewing skills had improved so much, she started making clothes to sell. Nothing out of this world, she told me. Simple dresses, blouses, children's clothes. But people buy them. And I make extra money. With that extra money, they had been able to move to a better apartment. Still modest. Still in a common neighborhood. But without mold on the walls. Without noisy neighbors. With a kitchen where 2 people fit. Do you want to come see it, Mom? Caleb asked me. I went. The apartment was small but cozy. They had painted the walls themselves. Light cream color. Second-hand furniture but well cared for. Plants in the windows. Family photos on the wall. And in a prominent place, a photo of me. From the day I graduated as a nurse over 40 years ago. Young, smiling, in my white uniform. That photo has been there since we moved, Chloe told me. She says it is her daily reminder of what true sacrifice means. Victoria also rebuilt her life. She had been promoted at the store where she worked. She was now a manager. She earned enough to live modestly, but with dignity. We saw each other occasionally. At birthdays, at family gatherings. Our relationship was never close, but it was respectful, polite, real. Margaret told me once, "Thank you for not destroying me when you had the chance." What do you mean? I asked. That Christmas, when you exposed everything, you could have humiliated me publicly. You could have shouted my lies for everyone to know, but you didn't. You limited yourself to saying the truth about your situation. You let me confess my own lies." She paused. "That gave me the chance to change with dignity. I appreciate it." I nodded. There wasn't much else to say. Emily remained my rock, my constant support. She came to visit me twice a week. She took me to lunch on Sundays. She called me every day just to know how I was. "Mom, I am so proud of you," she told me often, "for how you handled everything, for your strength, for your grace." "I wasn't always strong," I replied. "There were nights I cried myself to sleep, days I wanted to give up. But you didn't." Emily took my hand. "That is the difference. You felt the pain, but you didn't let it destroy you. You stood up. You saved yourself. That is true strength." In the 4th year, something unexpected happened. I received a call from the bank, the same bank that had handled the apartment mortgage. "Mrs. Margaret, we are calling to inform you about an account in your name." "What account?" I asked, confused. "A savings account that was opened 4 years ago. It has a balance of $23,200. I was speechless. There must be a mistake. I did not open any account. According to our records, your son Caleb opened the account in your name. He has been depositing money regularly, and there are also deposits from a certain Chloe." I called Caleb immediately. "What is this about a savings account?" There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Mom, every time I gave you money, you saved it. You never spent it. Emily told me you kept the money hidden at home, and I worried you might lose it, or that it would be stolen. So I opened a bank account in your name. Every month, besides the cash I give you, Chloe and I deposited a little more directly into the account." His voice cracked. "We wanted you to have something, a cushion, security, in case something happened. Caleb, it has been 4 years of deposits. Mom, it isn't much compared to what we owe you, but it is something. It is yours, for whatever you need, for whatever you want." I hung up the phone and cried. Not from sadness, from gratitude, from love, from seeing my son turned into the man I always knew he could be. With that money, plus the money I already had saved, I had almost $30,000. It was more than I had had in years. I could buy a small condo. I could travel. I could do so many things. But above all, I had security. I had peace of mind. One afternoon, Chloe came to visit me. She brought a box. "This is for you," she said shyly. Inside was a dress, soft gold color, elegant but not showy, perfectly stitched, with delicate details on the collar. "I made it thinking of you," she explained, "of your strength, of your elegance, of how you never lost your dignity, even when you lost everything." I tried it on. It fit like it had been made for me, because it had been. "It is beautiful, Chloe," I said with tears in my eyes. "Like you," she replied. "You were always beautiful, Margaret. It is just that I was too blind to see it." We hugged, long, tight, like mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, like women who had walked through fire and come out the other side. That summer, Caleb and Chloe invited me to dinner. They had something to announce. "Mom," Caleb said with shining eyes, "we paid the last debt. We are completely free. After 4.5 years," Chloe added, "we do not owe anyone anything, except you, of course. And about that," Caleb pulled out an envelope. "We know we can never pay you the full $40,000. The math just doesn't work. But we want to do something different." I opened the envelope. Inside was a contract, a lease agreement. "What is this?" "Chloe and I were saving," Caleb explained, "and we talked to the owner of the building where we live. There is an apartment available, on the same floor as us. 1 bedroom. Nice. Safe. And we rented it," Chloe continued. For you, if you want to come live near us." I looked at them surprised. "You do not have to do this. We want to do it." Caleb took my hand. "Mom, you have lived alone for years. You deserve to be close to family. You deserve for us to take care of you like you took care of us. And it is not charity," Chloe added quickly. "The apartment is in your name. You decide if you want to come. You decide when. You decide everything. We just want you to know you have the option, that you have a place with us. I looked at the contract. Then I looked at them, my son, my daughter-in-law, these two people who had hurt me so much, who had learned so much, who had grown so much. Let me think about it, I said finally, and I thought about it for weeks. I liked my apartment, my independence, my space. But I also liked the idea of being close to family, of seeing my son often, of building a real relationship with Chloe. Finally, I decided to move, not because I needed them, but because I wanted to, because I had forgiven, because I had healed, because I was ready for the next chapter. On moving day, Emily cried, "Mom, I am so happy for you." "Me too, honey." Victoria came to help. She carried boxes despite her age. "Thank you for giving them another chance," she told me. "Thank you for giving me another chance too." When everything was in place in my new apartment, we all sat together. Caleb, Chloe, Emily, Matt, Victoria, and me. "I want to say something," I announced. Everyone looked at me. 5 years ago, I lost everything. My house, my savings, my dignity. I felt invisible, used, forgotten. I paused. But today I realized something. I didn't lose everything. Because in losing those material things, I gained something more valuable. I gained respect. I gained a family that values me. I gained true love. I looked at them all, and I gained knowledge. The knowledge that I can survive anything, that I deserve to be treated well, that my voice matters. So thank you, I continued. Thank you for the hard lessons. Thank you for the pain that made me stronger. Thank you for the opportunity to teach you what it really means to love, to sacrifice, to forgive. I stood up. And now, let's start over, for real, with honesty, with respect, with love. Everyone stood up. We hugged, the 7 of us. A broken family that had rebuilt itself, not perfect, but real. That night, alone in my new apartment, I stood in front of the mirror. Margaret, 69 years old, survivor, warrior, woman who refused to stay invisible. I smiled at my reflection. "You did it," I told myself. "You went through hell and came out the other side. You didn't just survive, you triumphed." And it was true. Because when an invisible woman decides to raise her voice, when she decides to claim her worth, when she decides to save herself, the world has no choice but to listen. And I had spoken, loud, clear, with dignity, and the world had listened. My world had changed, and so had I. Forever. For good. Would you like me to create an audio file of this story for you to listen to the pacing and emotion?